Hello, everybody. This is François Legoff from the European Chemicals Agency, working on Euclid. And today, this is the webinar to present the latest version of Euclid, released in April 2021, version 5.15.0. The agenda for today's webinar, I will start with this introduction. Then my colleague will give a demo on how to use the web interface if you are rich users. I will come back to present the latest adaptations we did to Euclid in order to make it compatible with the requirements under the EU Plant Protection Products Regulation. Then my colleague will follow up with a demo of key features introduced in the new release. And I will come back at the end of this webinar to share some last concluding words. During the webinar today, a Slido question and answer session is opened. You can join it by the URL displayed on this slide and also published on our website. The Slido session will last until 5 p.m. Helsinki time on the webinar day. You will see that you can decide if you want to keep your questions anonymous, and together with my colleagues, we will answer your questions during the day. As usual, after the webinar, this recording will be available on the ECHA website and Euclid website, together with the presentation and the questions and answers. So let's start with some introduction to this April 2021 Euclid release. You might have seen this news alert on the 28th of April when we published the latest version of Euclid to all Euclid users. For your information, the users of the ECHA cloud services have seen their instances being updated automatically starting from the 26th of April. At a really high level, the main items in the scope are the ones presented here on the slides, some fixes and improvements. And we will have today during the webinar a demo on the major improvements or the main improvements introduced by this release. I wanted to say as well that the guided dossier approach that was started in 2018 in order to facilitate the data entry for the creation of REACH registration dossiers and for poison centers notification has been decommissioned with this release, so it's not available anymore because all the improvements brought by this feature have been incorporated in the standard way of managing substances and mixtures in Euclid. We have also advanced in our finalization of the web interface, and I will come back on this in the next slide. You will see the full details of what has been changed in this release by looking at the release notes that are published on the Euclid 6 website. As I was saying, we are reaching now the finalization of the web interface, and we believe that we brought the important features that we are missing to be able to replace the classic interface. Among these important features, I would like to note the report manager, which allows users to upload report templates that they would have created and use these templates to generate reports out of their substance or mixture datasets. On the Euclid 6 website, we have a page dedicated to the report, how to create them, and you can also download the reports that are shared with all the users. Of course, Euclid also includes a list of default reports that can be used with all Euclid installations. In this release, we have also implemented the user and role management, including group management if you are using an instance-based security, an option that is available to Euclid users. We have also implemented additional improvements to make the web interface easier to use, and you will see some of them during the demo done by my colleague during this webinar. I said that we are finalizing the transition to the web interface, but in this April release, you will still be able to access the classic interface because we want users to become familiar with features that have been recently introduced, like user management, for example. And it will allow also more time for ECHA to improve some aspects of the performance with the web interface. Although these performance aspects have been improved in the past, there are still some areas that will need some additional work. So how to access the classic interface with Euclid 6 version 5.15? First, you need to download Euclid and install it on your computer or on your server. And if you need to access the classic interface, please go to the Euclid website to answer a short survey. You see the link on this page. After you have completed this short survey, you will get the instructions on how to start the classic interface. So why this survey? We are collecting information to see for which reason users are still using the classic interface. And this survey has been published since October last year already, and we have collected some really useful feedback from the user community. We have collected so far approximately 500 answers, which shows us that the classic interface is still being used. But this survey also showed us that the vast majority of the users who need the classic interface are also using the web interface. We also collected some information about the reasons why the web interface is not used exclusively. Some users reported a lack of time in order to be trained, but also some users were missing some large or important features to do their work. One example is the report manager or the user manager, which has been introduced in the latest release. We also collected useful feedback to help us improve the user interface, and some of this feedback has been taken into account in the April release. For example, we have made the navigation tree easier to use when you browse data in your substance or mixture dataset. We have improved the way references are made between documents to clarify what is linked exactly and in which section. We have allowed changing the working legal entity for desktop version users, and we are working on additional trainings and updates for our manuals. And also we received the feedback that the survey should be a bit shorter, so this is what we did with this April release. You will see that the survey to access the instructions on how to use the classic interface is really easy and fast to answer. But still, please provide us with your feedback. It's really useful for managing this product and building improved versions in the future. Another thing we have been able to see with this survey is the area of work where the users need more the classic interface. And what you can see in this picture is that the majority of the users who need the classic interface are working in the rich area. It's not a surprise because these users have been the longest using the classic interface. So it's quite understandable that it would take more time to switch to a completely new interface. Although this interface has been there since 2 years, it's a big change to move to a new interface. So because of this result in the survey, we have decided to give more information during this webinar specifically to our rich users. And my colleague in the next segment of this webinar will demo this for you. See you later in this webinar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Valerio Ceccolini, and I'm working in the data availability team of ECA. Our team performs technical completeness checks on rich registration dossiers, and as a part of our job, we are also responsible for the compiling and updating of the manuals on preparing rich dossiers using Euclid. In this part of the webinar, I will initially give a brief presentation on what material is currently available for supporting the use of the web interface of Euclid. And after that, I will provide a practical demonstration on some of the useful features introduced in the web user interface that rich registrants can benefit of during the dossier creation. In order to simplify the transition between the classic and the web user interface of Euclid, ECA and Euclid have created a set of supporting materials that I'm now going to present here. So under the web page www.eca.europa.eu/manuals, users can find a series of manuals compiled with the purpose of helping companies to create, update, and submit REACH and CLP dossiers in Euclid. Okay, the manuals highlight the Euclid sections that must be completed for the different dossier types to prepare a valid and complete dossier that can be submitted to ECA through REACH IT. Step-by-step instructions for completing the different Euclid sections and processing each submission are provided in the manuals alongside overviews of the processes and legal concept involved. Here in the web page, you can see the list of the manuals available. And by clicking on the link, the manuals will be open and displayed. Please note that all these manuals listed here have been updated to reflect the changes introduced by the web interface. ECA reviews and updates these dossiers usually twice a year in order to keep them as up-to-date as possible. Useful information on the web interface can be also found in the web page Learn to use the new interface. The web page can be accessed from the link indicated on the slide and contains links to training and guidance material specifically to help you get familiar with using the web user interface of Euclid. This web page, for example, provides you with a direct link to the manual functionalities of Euclid in the web interface, which is an extensive document in which users can find detailed information on the functionalities included in the web interface. This document can also be accessed from within the web interface by clicking on the route question mark as shown in the next slide. As anticipated, I will now proceed with a brief practical presentation of some of the features introduced in the web user interface in order to improve, in terms of speed and quality, the tasks of registrants in creating and submitting REACH registration dossiers. This page that is displayed after logging in is the dashboard. From here, you can navigate and access your inventory of substances, mixtures, and articles. In case you have already pre-filled datasets and you would like to import them, this can be done easily by dropping the datasets Euclid file in the import box or by clicking and browse and look for the right file, for example, on your device. By clicking on this three-dashed button on the left side of the screen, the main menu can be accessed. And from here, it's possible to manage different inventories, such as the reference substance inventory, for example, or the contact inventory. In addition, from here, we can also create templates or categories. From this round button with a question mark, you can access the manual functionalities of Euclid in the web interface, which is the exhaustive guidance on all functionalities of the web user interface that we introduced before. The file can be accessed not only from the dashboard, but from any page within the web interface. Because generally REACH registrants store many dossiers and datasets in Euclid, it might be useful to easily retrieve them without spending too much time in searching them. An easy way to retrieve them is, for example, using this UUID search box, which is displayed in the dashboard. By adding the UUID of the selected dossier or dataset, the entity will be then immediately displayed on your screen. Alternatively, a substance or a dossier can be manually selected from the substances list page, which is here, and by using its search box here. The substance or the dossier can be found by adding the name of the substance itself in the search box, or through the inventory number or cache number. To create a new substance, you can click on the New Substance button, which is displayed here on the top right corner of the screen. And you can start the creation of the new substance by adding the name and then clicking on Create to go on. Once the substance is created, you will have by default the complete table of content displayed on the left side of the screen. So if we, for example, create a test substance here and we open it, we will see that the table of content displayed on the left side of the screen is complete, meaning that it includes all the possible sections that need to be filled for a generic submission. So the first thing to do when creating a substance is to define the working context, which can be done by adding a new working context and selecting the one that is needed from this drop-down list. For example, now we can select reach registration member of joint submission general case. If we apply, we'll see that the table of content on the left side of the screen will display only those sections that are required for this kind of submission, as you can see it here. If you don't know the exact working context that you're working with, you can always select the Reach Complete option, and all the sections relevant to Reach submissions will be displayed. Let's now navigate into an existing substance, for example, this test substance number 2. And by using the IUCLID web user interface, you can benefit from already being able to create the dossier header from the table of content. If you can see it here, by clicking on the type of submission, you will then be able to modify and edit the dossier header. This is particularly convenient because from the information stored here, you can validate or create a dossier without having to reinsert the information as it happened instead in the classic user interface. With this draft, you can shorten, for example, the work for validating and creating dossiers. Another useful tool that is introduced in the IUCLID web user interface is that from the substance page, so here, for example, you're able to review all the dossiers that have been created from that substance by clicking the View Dossiers button here. As you can see, then a page will open up and you will be able to see all the different dossiers that have been created for the substance that you had open. Please note also that this three dotted button here contains a series of important actions, such as export to I6S, create document, create component, generate a report, clone, or copy data from. Also, this button can be accessed from any page within the web interface. Let's now see how the proper data editing is done. So, for example, we can go to section 6.1.1, short-term toxicity, and to create a new endpoint, we should click on the plus button here and select the button with the circle, with a full circle. By clicking on it, the fields that needs to be filled will then be displayed in the main area of the web page here. For the name of the created document, you can easily change it, for example, by inserting a name on this text field here. Let's now call it, for example, test. I'm now going to show you how the actual data editing is done, just to show how the fields, for example, are activated differently compared to the classic interface. So let's pretend that we have created an endpoint study record representing a robust study summary, and we want to provide the test guideline used in the study, for example. First of all, we have to create a new item by clicking on the new item button, and then we have to click on the generated row, like this. The fields that will be filled, that needs to be filled, will be displayed in this sliding window here. Now, for the qualifier, for example, we can select according to guideline, and from guideline, we can select this EPA. So once we are done with filling the fields, you simply need to click close. And as you can see, in the table here, you will have all your information, all your data, as it was filled in the page that opened up before. One thing that I would like to point out is that a very useful feature of the web UI is that every document that is created within a data set has a UUID, as you can see here, that can be easily copied, pasted, and, for example, shared with colleagues if needed. Another important thing to be pointed out here is that, as you can see, we have two icons for setting the confidentiality flags. It doesn't matter which one you will pick, as they will both refer to the endpoint study record. So you can either select the confidentiality flag from the first or from the second icon. As you can see, if I click one, also the other one will change accordingly. Once the data editing is completed and you think your substance data set is ready, you should then run the validation assistant, which is also a step that is strongly recommended by ECA. The validation assistant reports that we will see soon. The validation assistant reports, which is going to be displayed in your web interface, will show all the technical completeness check and business rules failures that prevent your dossier to be successfully submitted. In the web UI, so in the web user interface, the validation assistant can be run from any web page within the dataset by clicking on the purple button validate, as I've done before. And before validating, you have the possibility of editing the dossier header and then finalize the validation. The validation assistant report, which is this page that I'm showing you now in the web UI, has been improved with a very useful feature that allows a registrant to easily spot and fix the business rules and the completeness check rules failures. From the report, in fact, as you can see, it's possible to simply click on the failure, and this will lead you to this window where you could easily fix the failures as indicated or instructed in the report. After the failures are fixed, you can then revalidate the dossier, as you can see here, revalidate the dossier and check if the failures have been fixed. If the report shows no failures, you can proceed with creating a dossier by clicking on Create Dossier. As I will show you here, Create Dossier. Here again, you have the chance to modify the dossier header, and when everything is in order, you can proceed with creating the dossier from here. By clicking on the three-dot button, which is like actually next to Create Dossier, I will show you in a minute, you will be able to access the advanced settings for creating a dossier. From here, you can, for example, include or exclude the legal entity that is attached to the substance, or to select, for example, the documents to be included in your dossier. Outside, of course, like the default based on the submission type that you have selected before. Before finalizing the dossier creation, Euclid will inform you again of the possible submissions rules that require fixing, as you can see here. The same instructions described previously for the validation of the dataset can be applied here as well. So, of course, you can click this View Fix Errors and fix them accordingly, as instructed in the report. Please note that if the validation assistant does not indicate any failure, it's not automatic that your dossier confirmation. It's not an automatic confirmation that your dossier is complete. As of June 2016, in fact, ECA staff has carried out additional manual verification as part of the technical completeness check. The manual verification done by ECA staff are not displayed in this validation assistant report, And of course, like if you want to know more about technical completeness check and manual verifications, please consult our new dedicated web pages at eca.europa.eu/technical completeness check. Before concluding this part of the presentation, I would like also to remind you about the possibility of using the Euclid cloud services. With this service, you can work with the latest version of Euclid in the cloud without installing Euclid on your computer or company servers. ECA cloud services are in fact maintained directly by ECA, and your Euclid will be always up to date. Euclid Cloud is really easy to set up also, and if you are a legal entity owner or manager, for example, you simply need to log into the ECA Cloud services and then subscribe to the Euclid Cloud services. If you're not a legal entity manager, your legal entity manager needs to assign you a Euclid Cloud trial or a Euclid Cloud service role. Then you will be able to access the Euclid Cloud services. On top of this, the service provides up to 5 gigabytes of data storage and has fully managed backups and dedicated help desk support. So we strongly recommend you to try and use this Euclid Cloud services. That is all from my side. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Hello again, François Legoff. I'm here now to introduce to you some adaptations we did to change Euclid in order to support the EU plant protection products. I will start by giving you some background information why we did this change. It was in the context of a collaboration with the European Food Safety Authority, who has a new regulation that entered into force since the 27th of March 2021. This new regulation on the transparency and sustainability of the EU risk assessment in the food chain has some requirements for EFSA and for this domain. For example, to make studies available to the public, the requirement to define a system for notifying studies, and gives also the possibility for EFSA to commission additional studies if needed. In the context of this new regulation, EFSA and ECA have worked together to provide IT tools to support this regulation, specifically in the context of the plant protection products, pesticides, and specifically around Euclid. If you want more information about this regulation, I invite you to consult the EFSA website. You have a link here. So going through the main adaptations that were made in the past releases and completed in the April release this year, I will start with the implementation of dossier types that support pesticides. When you go to mixture in Euclid and you want to select a working context, so the context under which you want to insert your data, you will see that you have a new category of dossiers for EU plant protection products. There are 4 main dossier types, one for substance authorization, for initial submission and renewals, both for chemicals and also for microorganisms that are used as active substance. We have also dossier type for preparing applications for maximum residual levels in food. We have also a dossier type for basic substance used as pesticides. You will see also that product authorization have their dossier types, although there is no agreement to be used at member states' competent authorities level. For the other dossier types, some related regulations have been updated to emphasize the need to use Euclid when preparing dossiers in this context. The second part of adaptations made for EU plant protection products in Euclid is the validation assistant. This validation assistant has been configured in order to support data entry in this context. So when you are preparing an EU PPP dossier, you can validate the content of your dataset and see if all the information required has been specified and recorded. I will continue now with the report manager and the reports available for these dossier types. You will see that a series of reports have been added in Euclid for these dossier types, mainly to support the evaluation work. And these reports have been made by EFSA with the support of ECHA, and they are meant to be updated in the future. Finally, we have also a filtering configuration that is made available in Euclid in order to preview the information that will be made publicly available after the submission of the dossier to EFSA via the ECHA submission portal. At the same time, we have introduced a new possibility for the dissemination preview. You can not only view the report that will tell you which field is going to be made publicly available in the Euclid dossier, but you can also generate a so-called filtered dossier that will contain only the information to be made publicly available. Now my colleague will demo some key features introduced in the new release, and I'll see you later to conclude this webinar.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark Roberts. I work in the Euclid team in the European Chemicals Agency, and today I'm going to talk you through the latest features available with the Euclid web interface with this April release of Euclid 2021. There are two advanced features which have been implemented in the web interface for this April release and which were previously available only in the classic interface: the user management and report management. First, I will take you through the user management feature of Euclid. User management can be found by going to the Euclid dashboard menu here. Here it is. User management is an advanced feature of Euclid and is typically used by Euclid system administrators who manage a central Euclid instance which is being accessed by multiple users. It supports the management of users and the roles and groups associated to these users. With this feature, you can manage a user's profile and contact details, as well as assign to a user legal entities and Euclid roles. A user can have more than one role associated to them. The Euclid role defines what operations and data a user has access to. In addition, a user can be associated to one or more security groups. A security group is typically used by a central Euclid administrator to share entities with a defined set of users who are part of a particular security group. The entities can be substances, mixtures, literature references, annotations, etc. Let's see how the user management works in practice. First, I click on the user. On this screen, you will see a list of users. This list of users can be managed in different ways. You can sort the users alphabetically or chronologically. You can create a new user by clicking on New User, or you can search existing users through the search bar. The users can be searched by their username, their first name, or the last name. All these search criteria are available in the UI before you. So for instance, if I want to search for the first name John, I can quickly search for this particular user. Let's see what mandatory fields are required for each user. Let's create a new one. So as you see, next to each field where there is a red asterisk, you need to fill out this information for the user to be saved. In this case, you need to fill out the username, first name, and last name. And finally, you also need to add a legal entity, which is also your working legal entity for the user to be saved. Let's go to a user I created previously, this one here. All these fields were available beforehand in the classic interface, so I won't go through every single one, but show you how the interface is working generally to manage your users. So as you can see here, I have already updated the user profile. I have a username, first name, last name, and email. This information in addition, can be actually viewed through the user settings in the top right-hand corner. Here is my current profile of my current user I'm working with. In this user, I can add a contact person here. I have a list of contacts that are already existing in my Euclid database, and I can search for these through the search bar. Again, I can search for all the values that are available in front of me in the user interface. So for instance, if I want to find Jeremy as a username, I can search for that here. If I only know a certain part of one of the search criteria, I can use a wildcard search to find the contact I'm looking for. For instance, if I know that XYZ is part of the organization name, but I don't know the rest, I can encircle these with a wildcard search, and I can find it quite easily. You may notice also that this is case insensitive, so I can put this in lowercase and it still finds the correct organization. Okay, let's add one of the contacts I have here. So further below, just to show you how this works, you can add roles, assign legal entities and groups to a certain user. To add a new role, you can add a new item here. Here, a list of roles that are existing currently are available to select from. Again, these are searchable by the values that are shown in the sliding window. So I can search by the role name or the role description. Currently, I have a custom role which I've created and assigned to this particular user. And finally, below in the user preferences, this is shown only when instance-based security is active, when I have group management activated. The options shown here define the default levels of access and sharing per type of entity per security group when a user is creating or importing data. Okay, that's the user part of the user management. Let's go to the role part. So a similar setup as in the user management, we have a list of roles which we can sort and we can search by as well. When you're searching, you can search by the role name or the role description. And again, the wildcard search applies. So for instance, if I know my role has the word access in, I can put wildcard search around it and my results will find everything with access. There are two other roles with access as well in the description, so it's found through results. I can also create a new role like I did for the user previously. Let's go to my custom role I've created. So here in the custom role, I've put my own role name to give an indication what this role is doing. This role means that the user associated to it will not have access to reference substances. And I've put a short description about what this role is doing. In the permissions or access to operations, this user will have access to the print operation and all these plugin operations here. However, the user will not have access to the export import options. This is because the user does not have, in the case of export, read access to all the entities and inventories, or in the case of export, all the read, write, and delete rights to all the entities and inventories. If the user is given read access, for instance, to the reference substances, which currently the user does not, you will notice that the warning next to export disappears, and therefore export is a valid permission in this case. I will turn back this to no access for the reference substances, and also unclick export and import. So here in the permissions and access to data, as you've just seen, you can set read, write, or delete access rights to all the Euclid entity data. Below, you can actually select at the section document level access rights. This is presented in the form of a tree, complete table of contents structure, and you can navigate through this to select the access for the various sections. Below this, we have application management, whereby a user is given system administrator rights for various actions. For instance, this user will be able to manage roles and users with a read access. And below, IBS management, whereby the user can, in this case, read group information. And below, we have a list of assigned users to this role. We can add new users if we wish through adding a new item. Okay, that's the role part of the user management. Let's now go to the group part. The group management is activated if you turn on IBS, instance-based security. As you can see, there's a list similar to the users and roles, this time of groups. By default, there's always, when installing Euclid, a common group. In this case, I've created a new group of users called Group of Users No Access to Nitric Acid. With this, just to remind you, you can also sort and you can also search, this time by the name of the group and the description, and you can, of course, create a new group. Let's go to this custom group of users I've created. So here I've put in a descriptive name of the group. In this case, I've indicated that this group should have no access to a substance nitric acid. And I've put a brief description saying that all non-default users should not have access to nitric acid in terms of reading, editing, or deleting information of that substance. And you can see here, like for the roles, a group of assigned users to this group. Let's quickly show you how this group security works. Currently, I'm logged in as a super user. If I go to my substances and I go to nitric acid and I go to share, you can see that this is not shared in the common group nor in the custom group I've created. Therefore, my custom user, as he is a member of both of these groups, will not be able to see nitric acid. So if I log out and log in as my custom user, and I go to substances, you'll see that nitric acid has disappeared. These two substances remain because these are shared with this user. Moreover, if I go to this substance here, you'll see that this user does not have access to the reference substance. And this is because, as you saw in his role settings, he does not have access to reference substances. So he only sees the UID of the reference substance. Okay, that is all for the user management. Let's move on to the report management. This advanced feature can be again found from the dashboard main menu and here under Manage Reports. Just for some background information on this, Euclid users can build their own custom free marker report templates or reuse report templates which are available to them. Report templates permit users to generate reports of Euclid information in different formats, such as RTF, PDF, CSV, or HTML. With this April release, these report templates can be uploaded and managed in any given Euclid instance with the right permissions. Let's see how this works. So like when we went to the user management, we have for the report management a list of reports that have been created in this Euclid instance. Like with the user management, these can be sorted. You can search for them, again with the values that you see on the screen. So the report name that I've given, the output of the report, the expected output, and the description. And a user can also create a new report. Let's go into one of these custom reports. You will notice, like for the user management, there are a few mandatory fields. First of all, you should always give a name to your report so you can identify it when you generate it from a Euclid entity. You should also give a description, although this is not mandatory, but very much helps you to identify what the report is doing. The next field is mandatory, which is the output type. You should always give an output type to your report so that Euclid knows what is the type of generation it should be generating. The next section is the templates. Here, you should always upload a main template. This is mandatory, but you can also upload additional templates if needed. Next, there's a possibility to set the style sheet options. As this is a CSV output, as identified here, a style sheet is not needed, as style sheets are only used for PDF and RTF generation. By default, it's always good to choose the default style sheet if you're generating an RTF or PDF report. This will be outputted in a portrait format. And finally, there's the mandatory option to select a working context. This will associate this report with a working context which it can be generated from. In this case, I've selected some reach working context for which this report can be generated. As I've now created this report and I filled in all the mandatory fields where the red asterisk is, I can generate this from any substance. Okay, let's go back to the main dashboard of Euclid. So with this April release, you'll notice a difference to this dashboard. The guided dossier approach is no longer here and has been removed. This is because its functionality has been absorbed by the other functionalities in Euclid. For example, the PCN custom document views. The second thing to notice about this dashboard is that when selecting a Euclid file to import through the advanced import option, I've got an example one here, you'll notice that the remarks are now added to the advanced import. In this case, this file has been exported with remarks, and when importing, the remarks are being shown. So if I go to my substance list again, and I select any substance and export, you'll notice now there is a remarks field. This can, when inputting remarks here, this will be shown when you re-import the file. If this is empty, there will be no remarks in the import file. Like this. Next, and this is a very useful feature, you can open in a new tab any substance from this list, and this applies for all the entities in Euclid. So when you have a list of literature references, of mixtures, or what have you, you can open these in a new tab. This is useful because, for instance, when searching for a particular substance, in this case, you can retain the search results in this browser window and open in a new tab one of the search results you have found, but keeping the search results in the previous window. So here I will open up the nitric acid. And as you can see in my previous tab, the list of substances remain. So in this view, in this substance view, you will notice that it's changed a little bit. Before we had two table of contents. We had an initial table of contents which were merged with various actions, and then another table of contents when you went inside any particular section document. Now the table of contents and the improved table of contents has been merged with a set of actions, so you have one view only of your substance. In this case, in the table of contents on the left-hand side, you can go to a dossier header and provide information on this dossier header as needed. This draft dossier header will be saved and can be used later when you validate or create a dossier. You can also switch working context. For instance, I can switch to reach registration above 1,000 tons by clicking here. Also on the left-hand side, you can expand and collapse and navigate through the entire section tree of a substance. For instance, I can open up section 4 here and go to a particular document. Let's say appearance, physical state, and color. All the actions you would expect are here. I can delete a document, I can add a document, and I can move documents up and down underneath the section node. You'll also notice that on the right-hand side, all the available actions and operations are available. You can create a dossier, you can validate. Through the 3-button icon, there's a number of actions. You can print documents, you can generate reports, you can copy data, etc. Okay, let's go to one of these actions, view dossiers, and we'll see another new feature in this April release. I've created a dossier from this root dataset called my dossier. If I had created more than one dossier, this list would appear here. Notice again that I can open up this dossier in a new tab if I wish, because a dossier is also an entity in Euclid. Let's open up this dossier in a new tab. So here's a dossier I created from this original substance data set. Now with this April release, you'll notice that if you go to dissemination preview, not only can you view a dissemination preview report in Excel, but you can also create a filtered dossier from this dossier. I can open up the dossier here. You'll see that the word filtered is prefixed to the name of the dossier. And now this dossier is part of my dossier list in my substances. So if I go to dossiers, I now have my original dossier and my filtered dossier. Okay, let's go to my dossier. I will now go back to the source dataset from which this dossier was created by clicking on Go to Source. So I'm now back where I started in the dataset for nitric acid. Let's go to a particular document and see some improvements at the document level. I'll go to section 752, repeated dose toxicity for the oral route and inhalation. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how that you can open documents in a new tab, and also the representation of linked documents has improved with this release, and that you can move repeatable items up and down inside blocks. So let's show the opening of new documents in a tab. So let's go to a cross-reference. We'll remove this one here for demonstration purposes. And I will select a cross-reference. So I've selected endpoint study records across references. There are 3 currently in my database, and I wish to, before linking to this particular endpoint study record, I wish to view it first, and I can open this in a new tab by clicking on the same icon as you saw for the entities. So by opening up this document, it means that I can inspect it first before making a link. And of course, I can choose this to make my cross-reference. The second thing to note here, which is a big improvement with this April release, is the representation of these cross-references and linked any kind of linked document or entity. This is a lot more obvious now what has been linked. You can see a document icon at the start to represent the kind of document that has been linked. You'll see a generic identifier of the document. In this case, repeated dose toxicity oral has been linked here. Next, you'll see the name of the document that has been given by the user. As you can see, this name corresponds to the document name here. And finally, for some of these cross-references, there's some summary information about the study or the document that you have linked. When cross-referencing to an endpoint study record, you'll see the type of information, experimental study here, if you have selected this in that field. Okay, finally in this document view, let's see how you can move up and down repeatable items. So here in the test guideline repeatable block, I have 3 rows of test guidelines. I can move these up and down by simply clicking on one and dragging it upwards or downwards as I wish. In this case, I've made other guideline at the top. I can bring it right down to the bottom like this. Okay, the next thing I would like to show you is improvements to the validation assistant. If I choose to validate this substance, I will just save this document first. If I choose to validate this substance, using the draft dossier header I had created for it, you'll notice I have advanced options now available in the bottom right-hand corner. And this follows the advanced options which we have available when exporting information or creating a dossier, for instance. You can include or exclude information you want to be used as part of the validation results. For instance, you can choose to include or exclude confidential information. Moreover, as with other advanced options, you can select or deselect certain section endpoints from your dataset to be included in the validation. So I will go ahead and validate this data set. The next improvement comes when you choose to correct an error from the validation results. For instance, if I choose to correct pieces of information in the substance composition, you will notice not only can you fix the information in line in this sliding window, but if you want to have a context of where this section document lies in the table of contents, you can open this view by clicking here, Open in Dataset or Dossier View. So here I have an overview of which substance composition I'm editing, and indeed I can fix the error from here if I wish and go back to revalidate. The final thing I would like to show you is for the poison center notification mixture context. So if I go back to the dashboard and I go to a mixture, here I have a mixture with the PCN poison center notification working context. You will notice that now for other pick list values, you can enter information in the languages that you have selected as part of the dossier header. So for this poison center notification, I have 5 different languages selected. And if I go to an other pick list, if I go, for instance, to classification labeling, and I go to affected organs and search for other, immediately there is another text box available for each language. And that concludes the demonstration for the highlights of this April release. I'd like to hand back now to Francois, who will take you forward. Thank you. Bye.
Welcome back from my side. Before we close this webinar, I have some additional information to share with you. The first one is an update of the REACH study results. You will see that on our Euclid website, you can download the latest batch of information made available as Euclid dossiers, corresponding to the information received in the context of the REACH regulation and the REACH registration dossiers prepared by industry in Europe. They have been updated on the 11th of March, and this is part of an update that is done twice a year, once in March, once in September. So please go to the website if you want to access this data. So what will happen next? We continue with the Euclid 6 development, and we already have the following plans released. In June or July, we will have a cloud release, so a release dedicated to the users of the ECA cloud services. And then in October 2021, we will have another release, public this time, so available to everybody to download from the Euclid website, which will include format changes. As last year, we will publish as soon as available more information on format updates that are planned. There will be also additional releases of Euclid during the year if there is a need to support specific user groups. You can refer to the page on the Euclid website that will give you the latest information on the planned releases and also some information about their content. I will share with you already some known developments for the next releases. We are working on category advanced options, which is a way to give the user the possibility to decide whether to include the full content of category members in a dossier or in a PDF file, or only the substance properties, phys-chem, fate and behavior, toxicological and ecotoxicological properties. Then we are working also on an extension of the PDF creation in order to create a PDF covering the full dossier or dataset. which means including all the components in case you have a mixture dossier with components, substance or mixture components. Currently, a PDF file has to be created per component. With this improvement, you will be able to generate one PDF file covering all the information contained in your dataset or dossier. Then we will introduce a new option. On top of the PDF creation, users will be able to create an RTF document, which is something you can, which is a file that you can open with Word or OpenOffice. Finally, we are going to work also on a single sign-on solution. This will allow users who have a Euclid server installation and a central account management system to integrate with Euclid so that the user accounts managed centrally can also be used to connect to Euclid. We will communicate this to the users as soon as it is available and start the testing with volunteers from the users community. Finally, I would like to remind you that today, during the day of the webinar, we have a Slido session where you can ask us questions about this release and about Euclid. And this session will last until 5 p.m. Helsinki time. On behalf of my colleagues and also from myself, I would like to thank you for your participation in this webinar. And I say see you next time. Thank you very much.